it's Lilia from the Help Yourself podcast, and today with me all the way from Calgary, I have Malcolm Saunders. Hi Malcolm, how are you?
Hello, hello. Yes, welcome. Thanks for having me on. I guess we should clarify, Calgary, Canada, not Calgary, Scotland.
Yeah, of course. I never thought of that. Calgary, Canada. And Malcolm is he's a raw food chef, but he's also got an incredible business called the Elixirs, which we're going to talk about. But how Malcolm and I met was his mum is Scottish and is the twin sister of one of my best friends, Valerie. And Valerie had said to me, you need to meet my cousin Malcolm, and she'd told me all about you, and I looked up your website and everything. I was like, oh, I need to go there. So I came to visit your place when I was over last time. But I believe you've moved since then.
That's right. We're in a new location. It's been 1 year now. The previous one was 10 years. So we had a good run there, but somehow, had to find a new spot. So we're loving where we are.
Was it because you had to expand?
No, it was, leasing. Yeah, time to find a new spot, kind of long term. So we're there for another 10 years.
So can you tell me just a little bit about your health journey and, how you became a raw food chef? And Valerie told me that, when she was 18, she was over, you were into meditation, but she was a bit more like, where's the bars, where's the nightclubs? And it's only now she's like realizing, oh my, he was wise beyond his years.
Yeah,
so tell us how your journey evolved.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was early on in my journey. With food nutrition, it started when I was 16, where I, literally overnight was eating kind of, standard American diet, meat, potatoes, that kind of thing. And for environmental reasons, decided to shift my diet. So I went from junk food, meat and potatoes to just junk food and potatoes, became vegetarian. And it did not go so well because I had no idea what I was doing. And, up until that point, literally food was whatever was quick, easy, and tasted good. The extent of my culinary abilities were I knew how to make Pop-Tarts, grilled cheese, and microwave pizza. And my favorite food of the day were breakfast cereals. I could have those breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks in between, no problem. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking like Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, that kind of thing. And so that was the beginning of my food journey. And I dove right in, and right off the bat, I started having, I already had, but it brought out a lot of symptoms like blood sugar issues, low energy. And here you are, I'm 16, I'm supposed to have all my youth, all my energy, and I could barely make it through a day. And that was the wake up call to like, there's something to this food thing. And I was really committed to the idea of, being a vegetarian for environmental reasons, and then animal rights, and then got into the nutrition piece. And like many of us, when we first start to begin aware of our diet, begin to make positive changes, we get into the idea of whole foods. So crafting things from scratch. And of course, I went in 110%. It was, okay, I'm never eating anything out of a box. I'm not even going to restaurants. Everything I eat has to be, made at home, fresh from scratch. And again, with the extent of my culinary abilities, there were a lot of failed experiments back then. And I was just trying things, I tried to make brownies out of adzuki beans, and It was a really adventurous, creative time. Still to this day, my family's like, ooh, Malcolm made it? Like they're unsure, it's... But how many decades was that ago? I've learned a few things, but that's how my journey started. It was just completely self-taught, a mission to kind of align, how I ate with how I wanted to show up in the world, the impact that I wanted to have. Long story short, more than 10 years later, maybe 12 years, I ended up shifting. No longer a vegetarian. I'm actually no longer of any diet, any persuasion. I've let go of all the names, all the titles. Maybe actually the only title I do like to wear is one of flexitarian. The opportunivore, and just that idea of intuitive eating, following my gut more than nutrition trends, and following those nutrition trends initially helped me learn a ton, get experience, get immersed in different diets, try and figure it out through experience. Yes. I've got a method I teach now that helps people, because I know I'm not the only one that was confused about what to eat. And so it's these four lenses. I it's an acronym I call a food scope. So SCOP and E, you can think of each of these as a lens that will give you insight into whether or not any food or any diet is right for you. And so the first one being science. Pretty obvious. I mean, none of these were earth-shatteringly shocking. It's just kind of a logical system. It's like, oh, okay, of course. Now, science can tell us what's in a food and what its nutrients, benefits, properties are, right? Very wonderful. Now, should we just eat based upon science alone? No. It is good, it's great, it's wonderful, but it's advancing all the time. So we need to realize it has limitations, right? It doesn't know everything. It's still young, especially when it comes to nutrition science. There's still so much we don't know. And just put it in its right place. It's one useful lens. Next one would be culture. Now, where nutrition science is young, cultural history of food, of nutrition is, you can go back as far as we possibly can. It's a very long track record, and therefore a very, very, very useful lens to look at any food and any diet, right? How has it been used culturally? What were its benefits? What were its properties? And no, of course, we can't just eat based on culture alone. A lot of people will do that, just like, oh, this is how my ancestors ate. Maybe not realizing, how did our ancestors actually truly eat? I mean, one part of my journey, I was a bit still kind of lost, still confused, just navigating it. And it was a mentor of mine says, just go back to how your ancestors ate. I was like, what? The Scottish?
It's a bit scary.
Right? Which of course, relates to modern day Scottish diet, where there's a lot of obesity, there's a lot of heart disease because of the modern foods. How did people of the olden days eat? Well, when it comes to, animal foods, for instance, it was the whole animal. It was whole foods, right? Consumed the organs, everything that helps balance that diet out. Used herbs. So we can really, really dive into a cultural diet. And then, of course, we've got to put it in the context of today, the context of now. But diet through the lens of culture, we can get so much insight from that. And the next one would be opinions, others' experiences, and they can really help us fast track where we want to go. I know I've had numerous experiences, friends, people I admired, people who I felt had figured it out, right? I wanted to learn. I was like, wow, like, what are you doing? How did you? What are you incorporating? And sometimes that was bang on for me, and other times I was like, okay, it might work for you, not for me. And again, we've got to put it into context. So many of us that navigate the world of food and nutrition, we look to the gurus, we look to all these experts. And, one thing that I kind of failed to do early on was, as I was immersed in this kind of raw food journey, I was dragging my wife and, infant daughter along at the same time. And that was a big mistake, right? And fortunately, we didn't go too far that it created too much damage in that sense. But, most of the people we were listening to were in a much different stage of life. Maybe they were, male, maybe they were in their, mid 30s. Maybe they were going through, they needed that diet for healing versus building, versus the beginning stages of life. And so that's where actually I came back to culture. I was like, okay, every culture around the world has specific diets for, preconception, during that gestation period, then the nursing, and then recovery for the parents afterwards. Culturally, there was that wisdom encoded, and a lot of my modern diets, like what other people are doing, it's a different scenario. So again, a very useful lens, but put in context. Then the last one, the most important one, is personal experience, right? So science can say all it wants, may have a cultural track record, everyone's loving it, but if it doesn't fit you, if it doesn't fit your personal experience in that moment, then forget about it, right? So that's where we need to bring all these lenses together to figure out what's the best food and diet. And we can get to this place of intuitive eating, following our gut more than nutrition trends, being that flexitarian. And it's a great place to be. I finally arrived.
It's so true. I often say that to people, and I think it's maybe more obvious in women, particularly if they have children, and then you've got the menopausal age. Your needs change. Like if you're training for a marathon, you're going to eat and train differently than if you're going to be at a desk all day. So it does change, and the body will guide you. But most of us are so out of touch with the body. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you, I like to try things out in my own body so that I can speak from a place of experience. And I always say that to people, all diets work, but if you don't like them and you don't do them, they'll never work. So everybody has a little bit of intuition, looking at a healing plan and go, I could do that, but I couldn't do that. So you just have to start somewhere. And as I
Yeah.
was always say in Scotland, just don't eat shite.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of simple.
You bring up some interesting points there, and this kind of relates back to the meditation. So if somebody's listening to this and like, oh well, intuitive eating, just eat what I want, right? That means have some donuts, this and that, like obviously. So it is a bit of a journey. There's a couple of key things there. So first and foremost, we need to get back to a more natural diet. There's a lot of admixtures, ingredients, things like that in our modern industrialized food diet that tricks the brain. Like high amounts of salt, high amounts of sugar, high amounts of fat, or chemical preservatives. Things that are going to mess with the brain chemistry. So the more we can get back to just natural foods in their natural state, natural chemicals, colors, smells, aromas, and attune ourselves to that versus kind of something that's been perverted, which is kind of playing on our cravings. And then within that too, we have a microbiome. This is the idea of our probiotics. And if we have that imbalance, if we've got too high of candida, parasites, these kinds of things, then that can start to influence our brain chemistry where we can get these kinds of cravings. So we need to bring that into balance. And then the last part is that listening, that inner listening, and that's where the meditation comes in. The body speaks to us all the time. We're just unaware of its language. We haven't been listening. And that's the space that meditation can bring us to.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the light cellar because it's such a phenomenal place, and the chocolate machine, because you're making this delicious, healthy chocolate. Because in actual fact, the cocoa bean is really high in antioxidants, high ORAC value, but obviously it's just the way some companies process it. It kind of ends up not being the superfood that it actually is. And I remember seeing your huge big vat, and your team were like creating all these amazing snacks, and they just seem to be absolutely loving their job. And I know that you used to go, I don't know if you still do, because I know you've got a baby now, to Ecuador to source your own beans. So tell us about the chocolate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, you laid a nice little intro there talking about, the difference between, cacao, which is the source of all chocolate, is truly, it's a superfood. It's incredible. The nutrient density that's there, the unique chemistry that it has. And we all know this is why it's one of our most kind of favorite beloved foods. But what has happened is kind of in the industrialization of that food, not only in the processing, you're absolutely right. What chocolate makers do to it, the things that they add to it, kind of degrades the quality. It's also actually even in the variety. Like the heirloom. So I'm really into kind of heirloom. I'm into wild genetics. Real, true, authentic, natural foods versus ones that have been maybe bred, hybridized for certain commercial qualities. Right? Everybody wants the nice big red tomato with no blemishes, that's big and so on and so forth. Well, breeding and how we're raising those in the middle of January, let's say, sure, it looks like a tomato, kind of sort of smells like a tomato, but certainly doesn't taste like one. And, we've all had that experience where the difference is, maybe it was your grandmother. I know, our grandparents, they grew vegetables and tasting it like right off the plant. That heirloom variety, you can go to the farmer's market, find those funky ones. There's more to them. There's more character, there's more flavor, there's more aroma, and therefore more nutrition, right? Again, these are all clues. You talked about the antioxidants, colors, pigments are clues to the nutrition and the smell. And so when we choose foods that are naturally full and rich of that, we're getting more from it. So cacao is exactly the same way. So first and foremost, it's starts with the genetics. What type of variety? So we specifically source out an heirloom variety that's put Ecuador on the chocolate making map of the world for having fine flavor, fine aroma. And this is, it's called the Riba Nacional, and it's their kind of celebrated variety. But what's interesting, what's happening down there is that there's also the rise of this industrial variety, which is a major producer. It's a great workhorse. You can plant the trees, and very early on, you can get a yield, and you can get a big yield. So it's very appealing, kind of from a production standpoint. But here's what's wrong with it, right? Is that it doesn't have that flavor. It doesn't have that aroma. It doesn't have that nutrition. So everything that we think is really good about chocolate, is only here in the kind of the more wild, the more heirloom genetics versus, the industrial crop. And so there's a bit of divide down there. So you got to really source out the good chocolate. Then when you get it, it's all about the processing and really bringing out those good flavors. And what we do is we use chocolate as a delivery system. So we're making it from scratch. Whole natural foods and sweeteners are going in there. And then we're adding in superfoods. We're adding in medicinal mushrooms. So it becomes a delivery system, because I like to say chocolate, it's the Trojan horse of good nutrition. No matter what you put inside, it gets past anyone's pearly gates.
And before I forget, I just love Malchemist.
Oh yeah, totally.
I was like, that is total genius, because it is chemistry, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what was obvious there. You guys were creating things, but from a place of knowing and understanding how the body assimilates and absorbs and how information travels. And yeah, so it's delicious therapeutic remedies, really.
Totally. That's what food should be. It should be a celebration, and fortunately there is a movement in business, in particular in the food movement, from Wall Street to Main Street, right? This relocalization. I think we've all realized that kind of the wholesale industrialization of our food system has produced very poor quality food that's high in calories, but very low in nutrients. Yeah. And so we're flipping that equation. We want nutrient density. We want in least amount of calories as possible, with the flavors coming through, and this idea of the craft, the artisan, people who are inspired, who love what they do, who are so knowledgeable. That's who I want creating my food, because it tastes better, number one, and we know it's more nutrition. It feels good, and that connection that you get, going to the market, meeting the farmer, getting your bread from the baker. That's kind of the resurgence that we're going back to, and it feels good.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And so what else? Tell me the whole thing, because I read the bio and your kind of mission statement. You make other things, obviously not just chocolate. So tell us about your other products and why you chose them.
Yeah, totally. So the biggest overarching kind of mission that we're on is we're helping people find and craft and learning how to craft their own food and medicine, for anyone on any stage of their journey. Maybe they're like me, just jumping in and they know things could be better. We're a resource to help, right? It's like, oh, you only know how to make Pop-Tarts? Okay, come on, let's get you into fermentation. Let's get you into this or that. We generally do get a lot of people that are, at least a few steps down their journey, started to make changes in their diet and are unsatisfied with kind of what's found in kind of the average grocery store, even a lot of health food stores. Maybe it's just pills, and it's like, well, where's the real food? Where's the variety? Most grocery stores actually have a very limited selection, especially compared to what our ancestors used to eat. Hundreds of different species, variety constantly. And so we have quite a unique selection. It spans all the way from different nuts, seeds, dried fruits, herbs, sea vegetables, algae, medicinal mushrooms, you name it. So it's a place that people can access things that they can maybe not find anywhere else, or if it's something a little bit more common, it's the quality is really high, whether that is like we talked about on the chocolate, the genetics are different.
So therefore you need less to get the same job. I mean, they say now with like a simple carrot, for example, it's got about 40% of the nutrition that it had even 30 years ago, because of the degradation of the soil. So therefore you have to eat 2.5 carrots almost to get the same amount of nutrition. And what you're doing is actually the opposite of that. It's dense, it's thoughtful, it's intelligent, that's it. Always ends up getting driven by money, which is the saddest thing. And now this whole lockdown thing, I think people are got a bit of time to breathe and think. So that's what I'm hoping anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
And become more mindful. You know, we're in the process of writing a book for the Heal Scotland movement, and it's about that, recipes, remedies, foraging. And when you were saying there about the variety, Claire, who's the medical herbalist, we had this huge salad, lots of different green leaves, a lot that just we got from the roadside or, you know, up in the field, and some that she'd planted and flowers. And I said to her, write down everything that was in that. Well, the list came, there's about 30 different things. And I was like, what? All edible and fresh and just lying there pretty much. And nobody knows about it. I mean, we are so lucky in Scotland, and Canada's the same. Everything's there. It's just a case of understanding and then obviously taking your knowledge into action.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. You know, my approach, and it sounds like you're on a similar wave, is this idea of, you know, adding in, right? So when I first started my diet, I was like, you know, not going to do this, going to change this, going to flip my life upside down. And, you know, that kind of sort of worked for me to kind of, you know, but it took a number of years. And what I've seen is a more successful approach is, okay, keep doing what you're doing, but we're going to do two things. We're going to, you know, upgrade the quality of what you're eating, right? So if you're eating, you know, conventional carrots or tomatoes or this and that from the regular store, okay, first we're going to go to organic, and then we're going to go to, if we can, like biodynamic, locally sourced, keep increasing the quality of the foods we already consume. So it's not like a radically different, you know, change of lifestyle, diet, so on and so forth, just increase the quality. Because one of the things I realized, you know, about the whole kind of vegetarian thing, the conversation is not plants versus animals, right? I mean, that's what it was for me for a long time.
Yes.
Oh, you know, animal foods are bad, they destroy the environment, not good for your health, so on and so forth. That is only a half truth, right? So that's related to industrialized food production, which equally applies to plants, right? So industrialized food production of plants, you know, corn, soy, canola, you know, monocultures, you know, all that is equally damaging to the environment, to the health, all the social implications. So it's not the food, it's the source, it's the where and how it's raised and the quality. So if we can upgrade on that end, we're going to do massive changes for our health, benefits, so on and so forth. And then the other part of the equation is the adding in, adding in new and different and unique foods, things that we've never been exposed to, like you said, like things that are growing literally in our backyard. If we can discover what those are, what their benefits are, properties. And at first, you know, it's just a little nibble, right? You hear about, okay, dandelions are so good, right? Every single part of the dandelion is edible. It is medicinal. Now, does that mean that I'm going to sit down and eat a bowl full of dandelion greens or expect anyone else to? No, it's a journey to get there. Just the fact of just nibbling on it, just to explore, you know, the foodscape, I like to call it, you know, that literally grows all around us wherever you are in the world. And that's tapping into that cultural knowledge, that cultural wisdom. You know, I'm always fascinated. You know, I love the world of herbs, love the world of herbalism. I love exploring the Chinese and the Ayurvedic and the Amazonian. Like it's exciting. But the one thing I always encourage people to do is learn about those that, you know, that lived here before us. How did they survive when they didn't have the convenience of grocery stores, when they didn't have the convenience of pharmacies? Now, we're fortunate. It's not meant to be a replacement, but it's again, this idea of adding in and expanding our palates, expanding our knowledge, you know, one nibble at a time. You know, even just nibbling on a little bit of dandelion, because of the bitterness, right? It's the flavor. You can't actually sit down, and most people wouldn't be able to do it because the flavor is too much. But that flavor is very medicinal, helps stimulate the bile, helps increase digestion. So just that little bit, you know, just on that physiological impact alone is worth it. But there's also something deeper, more metaphysical, that you're deepening your connection to your land, you're broadening your kind of food scope in that way.
Absolutely. And I had a very interesting dandelion tea experience just a few weeks ago, because I just went out and picked a lot of dandelions and put them in a teapot and drank it. And then next thing, I was like, oh, what's going on here? Because I was like, oh my God, that's not tea. And again, it was a really good lesson, because I was like, you're just not thinking about the quantity, right? The dose. You wouldn't put 20 antibiotics or 20 aspirin in your mouth. I hadn't, I was a bit mindless about it. I didn't really take the power of the plant into consideration. It was a really good learning experience because I was like, okay, you need to treat this with respect.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we've been raised in a culture that it's mindless eating. Oh, just a bag of chips, just eat this, eat this. It's like, because it's empty calories, right? It's just in they go, in they go. I got to constantly feed, but the more mindfulness that we can bring to everything we eat, the healthier we'll be, for sure.
I know, absolutely. I know that you're short of time. How much more time do we have?
Oh, we got 10 minutes.
Oh, fantastic. Now, are your products available online?
Yeah, we, I guess spoiler alert in some sense, we don't ship very far. We're mostly a local business, and some people look at me and go like, "Oh, what are you doing? You could be making so much more money." But this is exactly what we've talked about. I am so inspired about the local food movement, and I'll just throw in a caveat. What I offer to my local market is, food literally from around the world. Some of it travels a very long way to get here. It's the spice of life in that sense. So as much as I'm into kind of more a localized diet, I think the majority of our calories, especially the fresh ones, the meat, the milk, the veggies, eggs, whenever anyone is eating, the better we can source that locally, the better off, we'll be on so many fronts. But it's that kind of the spice of life, the exotics and the erotics, like we've always been trading, spices, salts, you name it.
Yes.
That's something that we do offer, things from farther afield. And then interesting too, as people get into that, what's emerging in the kind of local food markets is, people start growing exotic things like Schizandra is growing in North America now, goji berries, you name it. So we can actually source that locally. So I do have a web store. We have a lot of learning, a lot of online education. People can find out our YouTube channel. It's The Light Cellar at YouTube. Tons and tons of videos. We've got some online courses on our web store as well. We do some shipping, but again, I'm just more into kind of providing for my community in that sense. And we do ship all over Canada. I get it, but we rarely ship overseas. But if you get any inspiration from us, see who's got it, try and find it in Scotland or wherever you're watching.
We need to get Val to open the Scottish Light Cellar.
There we go. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. So we'll put the links on, for people to do more research, because I think, you're very clear and concise, and people need that, in this like absolute massive confusion around food. Right. And breathing. They're starting to complicate breathing now as well. So let's finish off in meditation, because I think we all understand that the food thing, that we're treating it like a drug. We're eating our feelings away. So the meditation or whatever, kind of relaxation, deep relaxation into the subconscious mind that you do can really assist in helping you to stay focused, because that's one of my big things about the Heal Scotland movement, is that we are tribal and we do tend to end up copying the people around us, which is the real reason that you need to have your tribe, and you need to be with people that are going to keep you, in the nicest possible way on track and inspire you about all the good things and the energy, etc. Instead, you go into the office and it's like rolls and sausage and tomato sauce and cans of Coke, etc. So yeah. I think that's the reason why we all need to make an effort like yours, and I love that idea, just to add in. I think that's a really doable concept. So you can go to the supermarket and just pick up a couple of organic things and just get started. And it's that taking action, isn't it? But tell me about the kind of meditation that you do, because again, there's so much confusion around it. So how do you switch off?
Yeah, for sure. So I trained in a technique called the Vipassana, which is, something that the Buddha taught. It's not religious. There's no dogma or anything. It's just kind of pure observation, just going internally, starting off with kind of watching your breath, which is a way to kind of sharpen and focus the mind. And then really it's all about just turning internal, just observing one's own sensations. And, the idea of kind of formally meditating is just, it's literally, it's a practice. So you'd be able to bring that awareness into your everyday. It's that idea of like yoga on the mat, yoga off the mat. It is a practice. It's all fun and be like, oh, nice and peaceful while you're doing your yoga session, but you get in your car and you get into traffic and you're reacting and you're getting upset. The more that we can bring that awareness of sensations, of feelings, right? Whether it's something that we're eating or we're trying to avoid through food, it's the observation of our feelings, that they just come and they go, and our thoughts, they come and they go, and it's just an observation. It's impermanent, and just really bringing awareness to oneself, and that plays huge in terms of intuition. That's where things arise on that deeper surface as well. So it just, yeah, so many benefits. Calming the mind, which then allows the body to calm down. It's like, oh, actually, I'm holding tension here, or I'm, stressed out. But also it just allows for more communication from one's own body, as well as, how, the mind and the body is kind of interacting, interrelating with the outside world and other people. All those messages start to become clear. Yeah, absolutely. So many benefits. And earlier on, when I was just learning the technique, it did tons of, like a couple of years of just hours and hours and hours a day of practicing. I was really kind of focused on that. And that was for a phase of my life. And, I joked at some point, I was like, oh, I thought I was going to become a monk. This is what I'm going to do. But no, it was so deep to practice. And what I realized, I want to be in the world, and I want to help be part of the positive change versus kind of running away from it. I spent a number of years, not wanting to be a part of the world. I didn't like the direction it was going. I couldn't really relate to a lot of people, and kind of the insanity of our kind of, modern lifestyle. And so I retreated, and that served me very well in terms of getting to kind of truly find myself, develop some inner strength, develop that inner calm, to now be in the world as a force of change, for a force of good.
Fantastic. I was just going to ask you that question. Do you feel that all that practice has helped you to create this beautiful, mindful, conscious business?
Oh,
obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about your team? Because I know that the people are queuing up to work with you.
Yeah, for sure. We got a great team, and I'm really about helping people on their journey. I never want to give anyone a job. I want to give them an opportunity to learn, to grow, to develop their passion. And whether they stay with me, I say it right up front. I was like, whether you're here for 3 months or 3 years, it doesn't matter. As long as that you're inspired, that you're learning, you're going forward, and there's that equal kind of contribution that you give your all and we'll give our all to you. There's no sense of just job, I gotta show up, I gotta go do that today. It's like, no, if you ever have that sensation, it's time to go,
yes. And just encouraging people that's okay, it can run, it's the reason or the season, isn't it? So that is fantastic. Sure. Well, listen, it's been brilliant to talk to you. You're totally inspiring, and thank you so much for your time. And we'll set out the leads for your website, for your YouTube channel, and people can get more of your inspiration there. Thanks so much.
Cool. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you this morning. Thanks so much for having me on, and thanks for everyone that's listening. And reach out anytime. People can find me on Instagram.
And if you're in Calgary, Canada, they can go and actually buy that wonderful medicinal chocolate. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Malcolm.
Okay, for sure. Thank you.